Well, the valves are out of the cylinder, and I washed it out, cleaned it up some. I'll have time to give it a light hone now. I can't get that particles, those spots out of that cylinder wall there, so I'm going to go ahead and hone it a little bit here. I'm tempted to say that this was a takeoff cylinder, as dirty as it was and everything else, but there's just too many indications on it that somebody had done some work on it, some overhauled it. There's still fresh, well, it's not fresh anymore, but there's still lubriplate in there on the valves. And I can see the marks and stuff in here where somebody did some cleanup on it, but it's just nasty. I'd be ashamed of that. And it's had a light hone on it, but the hone marks on it aren't really that great either. Alright, that took out those spots. It took out the lumps, but there's spots in there still. Yeesh. The more I look at this, the worse it is. Well, that dirt is not from the honing. That's coming loose from the cylinder there, up above where the piston stops. Crying out loud. I've spent some time on this cylinder and I've got it cleaned out. I've got it honed and it's smooth now, and I cleaned out around in those intake chambers there, the intake and exhaust ports. I got those cleaned out. Oh, they're not perfect, but they're a heck of a lot better than they were. They're not dingleberries hanging up in there anymore. I want to seat those valves. Oh, they don't look too bad, but I thought I'd go ahead and put some compound on them and seat them in there. And I have a valve seating tool. It's got a shaft and it uses a suction cup and it just hooks onto the valves and spins them back and forth. But the way it works is it spins back and forth. It goes a couple degrees one way and then a few degrees back the other way. So it's rocking the valve like this. Problem is that the shaft here is not near long enough to go down in that cylinder to do that. So I'll have to see what I can do about that. I took this rod up to the basement, measured it up. I found a piece of 3/8 inch diameter aluminum rod and turned it down on the end and threaded it to a 1/4 inch 28. So now I can get in there and lap that valve. Now all I have to do is find my valve lapping compound. I thought I had it up in the basement with the lathe and stuff, but I couldn't find it up there, so I guess now we go on an Easter egg hunt. I found my valve lapping compound. It was right where I thought it was, except it fell down behind some other stuff, and so it took a little bit, but I found it there, and also dirty, so I didn't recognize it. So we'll do this. Get that valve in there. Open up this container here. Okay, there's the stuff. It's just grease with some real fine grit in it. I want to spread it around here on the face of this valve and then stick the valve down in there in the valve guide. I probably should put some oil on that. And the valve is in there. So now I just okay, so that valve is lapped in. That should make it seat pretty good. That's the intake valve. Do the same thing on the exhaust valve, and then I'll clean this up. I want to make sure I get all of that grit out of there. Don't want any of it getting on the valve stem and wearing those valve guides out, or down in the cylinder and wearing the cylinder out. These exhaust ports here still had gaskets on them, gasket material. So I cleaned them up and got that stuff off of there. And I take some thread cleaning tools, some thread rethreading tools, not threading tools, but thread chasers I call them, for cleaning up threads or restoring threads. And I'll go ahead and clean up these threads. This exhaust port here, and this is the intake port over here. This had studs in it. That one over there uses bolts. Anyway, I'll get these threads cleaned up on here. They're gummed up nasty. Back in 1992 or 93, I forget which, I was fish spotting in Bristol Bay. I'd taken the airplane into what was supposed to be a well-respected engine shop in Anchorage, and had the engine overhauled there. And I went out to Bristol Bay and was fish spotting. Well, we were flying from daylight till dark. Basically, it started getting daylight about 1:30 in the morning and got dark about 11. I was flying an average of 14 hours a day, and I started having problems with valves sticking. This on my Cessna 170 with an old 0300 engine, 145 horse Continental. Anyway, I was having sticking valves almost every day. There would be a valve stick in it, so I would be flying all day, and then I'd spend all night tearing the airplane down, engine down, to repair sticking valves. One night I had to tear 2 cylinders down to repair sticking valves. So I was basically doing overhaul. I'd have to take the engine apart, take the a cylinder off, drop the valves out of it, clean the valve guides and the valve stems, put it all back together, and then put all the baffling and everything all back together so I could go flying again the next day. Anyway, doing that, it'd take me 4 or 5 hours to do a cylinder. Actually, it got down to where I could do them in a couple hours. But doing those, working all day and doing cylinders at night, I still did a better job cleaning the cylinders up than what these guys did here, or this guy did here. So this cylinder is ready to go back together. Finish washing it out, make sure it's absolutely clean. And I don't know if I have any more engine assembly lube or not. I'll have to see what I ordered some. Hopefully it'll be here pretty soon. Anyway, I'll get this cylinder put back together. I have to make myself a clean spot for it now. This bench is atrocious, but for tearing it down and doing a cleanup on it, it worked okay. So I have to get myself a clean spot now to put everything back together. Oh, I still have to do the piston. I've got to take the rings off the piston and make sure that it's clean. It had crap all over in it and down inside the ring grooves and stuff. So I'll go take it apart, clean it up, and put it back together too. I've got my bench cleaned off to a degree, not entirely. That's going to take an act of God, but I got it enough where I could put down a fresh sheet of newspaper and work on this piston. I've already done a lot to this. I've already got most of the gunk off of it. There's a bunch of crap there come loose now after I soaked that for a little while. But I soaked in here and used the wire brush in here on the inside of this skirt on the back side of this piston, and that thing was just looked like a crystal cave in there. Anyway, it's better now, but I still want to get it better. I don't want any loose stuff in there falling off into the engine. That will get a little bit more work on that. But the outside of this piston had crap on it too, and I want to get it cleaned off, get these rings off of here so I can get that cleaned off. I've got a little tool here for expanding the rings. I have to remember which one's which. So this ring, I don't know whether it's got any wear on it or not. There's no knife edge on it. It says top on it, PLH. So that's the top one there. Alright, so let me get something and write down which ring is which. Okay, so we got the AEL 742 41 PLH is the top ring. Okay, those are off. We'll get those cleaned up. There's a little bit of carbon in there that didn't get cleaned out of there. Ideally, the way to clean the carbon out of there was with a broken ring. I don't have a broken ring and I don't want to break one. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean this up. Make sure that there's no dingleberries in here. And let's see, there's dust and dirt in there in that piston pin boss. So that's not so bad now. But I'll get that cleaned back up and put the rings back on it, and then it'll be ready to go in the cylinder. I'm glad I pulled those rings out of there and checked those ring grooves. I was worried about the little woolly boogers and stuff, and all the gravel and crap that came out of the inside of there getting around in there in those ring grooves. But once I pulled those rings out and got to looking, there was carbon stuck in these ring grooves all over the place. This is what I got out here. So anyway, they weren't cleaned out very good. Well, we got them a little better now. Scrape these out a little bit, trying to be careful not to change the geometry of these grooves any. Just get that carbon loosened up and broke loose out of there so it'll come out. Oh, they're a lot better than they were. That's pretty good inside there now. Try to make sure I got everything out of there. There's a little gob there that would have come loose. All in all, it's a heck of a lot better than it was. Oh, I think I'll spray that down now and clean all that stuff up and put it back together. The piston is all cleaned up and back together, or at least I put the rings back in it. You don't want to line the ring gaps up in the same place on them. You want to kind of turn them around so that they're not lined up, so that the gases don't just have a jet to flow down through. Turn the rings so that they're 120 degrees apart. I put lube on those. I like to put lube on everything when I go to put it together. I'm using this stuff here. A friend of mine gave me this years and years and years ago. Well, maybe it was more years ago than that, I don't know. Anyway, he was a mechanic here for the city shop, and they use that stuff. It's really super slick. Permatex Ultra Slick Engine Assembly Lube. It's sticky, it sticks on, but it flows pretty good too. It's pretty good stuff for engine assembly lube. Anyway, I've been using that for years. That one's gone. I just ordered some new stuff. It should be here sometime in the next few days, but I've got enough here to go ahead and put this cylinder back together. I think put the valves back in anyway. I'm not putting the cylinder on. I would coat the cylinder walls with it and everything, but hopefully I'll have the new stuff here by the time I get ready to put the cylinders on. Anyway, that is all cleaned up and ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with some clean newspaper, a fresh piece of clean newspaper, and put it back over there in the hanger where we'll have it when it gets time to put it together. So the piston is done. I'm going to go ahead and go over and put the valves back in that cylinder. That cylinder is back together. Got the exhaust valve in and the intake valve in, the keepers in, and everything is copacetic on that. So I put that one back in the box and it'll be ready to use. Hey Cat, you decided to come out of hiding now, huh? Okay. Cat was kind of skitterish for a few days. One of the dogs got in here and took after it. So the cat took off for a few days and was kind of shy. So he's coming back out now. Don't know what he's going to do when we open the hangar door up here tomorrow and leave it open from now on. Anyway, he's back. That's good. So the cylinder's done. I'll put it back in the box, get it all boxed back up, and it's here ready to go.